Hello everyone, welcome to week 3, module 3. I hope things are going well for you. Please know that I welcome emails, questions in the classroom, or a phone call if there's anything that you might like to chat with me about. At the end of this week, a quick opinion poll will be released to you. I'll ask you just a few quick questions about how things are going for you thus far in the class. Also, a heads up, this week you have your first major assignment. I needed to wait until you had some of the foundational material under your belts before assigning it. I look forward to seeing your work. This week in our class, we will cover some of the legal considerations of the risk of performance appraisals, and also we'll look at how organizations link appraisals to rewards. A performance appraisal is considered an employment decision under the law. This means that all of the laws and regulations pertaining to other employment decisions, such as the Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, age discrimination, the Equal Pay Act, Fair Labor Standards Act, and more apply to performance appraisals if you link them to rewards. You may already be well versed in the legal risk of performance appraisals, but not all are, so we provide an overview. For those of you in the HR class in the program, a separate course is provided to you focused more on employment and labor law. We also discuss in this module some of the employment actions that can follow the appraisal. Things like training, promotion, rewards, disciplinary actions, including termination, or what I have called exiting the employee. Rewards do not always need to be monetary, but we will look in this module at various types of pay and a few incentives, because many times appraisals are linked to the rewards that we give. We also give you a little information about the 360 feedback tool and some of the risks for using it for compensation and other decisions. Your learning outcomes: by the end of this session, you should already be able to evaluate the link between appraisals and reward systems, identify key legal risks pertaining to performance appraisals, describe how 360-degree performance feedback helps to align the organization vertically and horizontally, and you should be able to decide on relevant compensation and rewards related to the performance appraisal. As usual, see your course module for an overview of your deliverables for the week and the links to the reading assignments. Legal landmines of performance appraisals. There are numerous landmines or risks in a legal sense in the administration of performance appraisals. You may be already aware of these, but you may also just be following your organization's good practices that most likely, if followed, will mitigate your risk. Performance appraisal programs, regardless of the method used, must be administered in a fair and legal manner. Besides the more obvious purposes, performance appraisals should be considered as potential evidence for an employer's defense in a lawsuit. Properly documented performance appraisals build paper trails that favor employers in defending against lawsuits. Conversely, written comments and evaluations that are too general, speak out of context, are ambiguous, or are too charitable not only undermine needed discipline of a poor performer, but also serve as ammunition for disgruntled former employees in their lawsuits. Therefore, persons responsible for the input of the evaluation process needs to be properly trained to understand the essential criteria, as well as to minimize the employer's exposure to liability for wrongful terminations and discrimination. No one has designed a perfect performance evaluation system that precludes lawsuits, but lessons can be learned from recent court cases involving performance appraisal programs. These cases teach us that performance appraisals must be conducted in a uniform, non-discriminatory manner and only for reasons that are consistent, objective, job-related, and well documented. Properly administered performance appraisals offer the added benefit of reducing turnover attributed to poor quality evaluations. One thing is certain, performance appraisals, even those that are properly measuring performance with objective job-related standards, need to be managed by skilled professionals in order to avoid lawsuits. And like contemporary compensation programs, performance appraisal programs should be constantly reassessed for further design improvements, at least until that flawless performance appraisal program comes along. We use the Uniform Guidelines on Employee Selection Procedures as our guide for our use for performance appraisals because they are considered employment decisions. The Uniform Guidelines on Employee Selection Procedures also guide us on promotions, merit increases, bonuses, termination, so we use it for the performance appraisals as well. So let's go through some of the legal risk. Disparate impact or treatment is the unlawful result of performance appraisals creating results that are disproportionately negative to our legally protected classes, which include age, gender, religion, disability, ethnicity, and others. Some of the articles assigned for this week will give you more detail on disparate impact and treatment. Your HR team or your legal department will know the formula and will know how to check for results. They'll know how to make the make the evaluation statistically relevant. But those of you who are administering the performance appraisals could also ask your legal or human resource department about their monitoring of disparate impact and treatment. There's also the chance for defamation charges. These are usually caused by someone speaking out of turn about a person's performance appraisal when they should not be doing so. The privacy of performance results need to be kept confidential. Another typical example of how defamation suits can occur is when someone other than a trained HR person gets a call and gives a reference that makes negative statements that cannot be substantiated. Also, harassment charges can be brought if the person receiving the review feels that there is sexual or some other type of harassment related to the review, or if the review is seen as retaliation for a complaint. Negligence charges can also be brought if no action is taken when poor performance has been identified and no action is taken on it. Also, if poor performance is indicated in the review and no action is taken. There could be a charge of what is called negligent retention, and this is again is a legal term. If you keep someone on after you know that there is a performance issue and that person causes harm to another person, then that is negligent retention. Next week we will discuss rater errors and biases that, while on the surface they may not be illegal, but they can lead to lawsuits. They can also cause a morale issue or an issue with perceived organizational justice. Speaking of perceived organizational justice, I know I've used this term a few times. I would just like to review some of the concepts regarding perceived organizational justice. We expect justice in our relationships with each other and with fellow employees, as well as all through our workplace. Justice that relates to the workplace is referred to in literature as organizational justice. In the reading list for the course, you will learn more about this important topic. I did not assign a document for the week because I think I give you in this presentation basically what you need, but if you want to learn more, there is an article in your optional reading. Organizational justice describes the role of fairness as it relates to the workplace. It's concerned with the ways in which employees determine in their mind if they have been treated fairly in their working environment. Two or three components of organizational justice are procedural justice, distributive justice, and interactional justice. Procedural justice can be defined as the fairness of the procedures used to determine the outcomes that employees receive or achieve. When employees perceive that the treatment that they receive is based on fair procedures in determining their outcome, an employee may tend to show better performance. So there's a causal relationship there. Distributive justice. Distributive justice can be defined as a person's perception of the fairness of those outcomes, and those outcomes could be benefits or rewards, or they can be punishment, and it can be their evaluations. Interactional justice, and some refer to this as informational justice, goes beyond the fairness of the outcomes and explains how decision makers treat their employees in regard to information that is shared about the evaluation or the decision. An example: let's pretend that all of you have been assigned a large project for a client. You're all working together, and you have met with the HR team, and you have decided how your bonus for achieving success on the project will be measured. You all decided that you will be evaluated on delivering the project on time, within budget, and whether you have met the specifications that the client has set. You all have agreed to this, and therefore you are satisfied with the procedural justice, the procedures on how your bonus is going to be determined, your bonus criteria. So you finish the project successfully and you receive your bonuses. Some of you have larger bonuses than others. That most likely will result in a lack of perceived distributive justice. You had agreed to the procedures, but somehow the rewards have not been distributed in the way that you thought that they were going to be. So you sit down with that HR person who helped you devise your criteria. It's explained in a very non-defensive, clear manner that while the criteria for each of you had been determined and was the same, the bonus was awarded as a percent of your salary. So you all achieved a 10% reward, but it was based upon your salary, and some of you have higher salaries than others. That is interactional justice, and I'll let you decide how happy you would be with how that information was shared and what that information turned out to be. So you can see that in each of these cases, in each of these elements, they have to be present. So you agreed with the procedure, you had agreed with how it was going to be determined, but you didn't agree with the way it was distributed, and you may have agreed that it was good interactional justice because you got an understanding, but all three have to be present in order for their to be perceived organizational justice. What this speaks to is that we need to be transparent with our policies. We need to give employees a voice in the appraisals, let them ask questions to be sure that all aspects of the rewards have been, or anything else, are known. And in sharing information, we need to show respect and empathy for individuals. I hope that is helpful. So let's go through some of the best practices for performance appraisals. What can we do in order to protect our organization in a legal sense? First of all, and I know you'll hear this many times from me and also in our material, all who gather data and share evaluations need training. Not everyone is skilled, not everyone is knowledgeable, so we need to be sure that everyone who's collecting the data and sharing the evaluations is up to speed and is aware of all of the legal landmines and what they should do to protect the organization. In order for performance appraisals to be legal and fair, they will be conducted in a uniform, non-discriminatory manner and for reasons that are consistent, objective, job-related, and well documented. We never want to use criteria that is not related to the job, such as, oh, he's a rising star, or she is very well liked, or that's the boss's favorite. If a good job analysis has been completed, the job description is an excellent source for the evaluation, or at least one part of it. The process needs to be managed by skilled professionals, most likely your HR team. The HR team is most likely knowledgeable about job analysis, job design, the design of a performance appraisal tool, and how to deliver the feedback and coaching in a way that can be motivating for continued success. If for some reason you don't have an HR team or you feel that there's not the time or the expertise there, you can also bring in consultants. Performance appraisal programs constantly should be constantly reassessed for further design improvements, including a meta-analysis for disparate treatment or impact, different trends and types of evaluations. We may want to update the way the performance appraisals are conducted, or for planning for additional training. All of our jobs are organic in a way. They morph over time. So what we are being appraised upon is in terms of criteria. We need to look at that to be sure that it's still relevant. And just as a side note, there are instruments that can help to bring personal biases to the surface, these personal biases that can lead to lawsuits at the worst. They're also a good tool to use in training, since most individuals, if not all, have some biases that interfere with a fair and objective evaluation, but most likely they're not aware of that bias. Starbucks recently used a tool in their training for their unconscious biases that were manifested in a very public situation. One tool is called the Implicit Association Test, or IAT. It was created by Harvard. Now, we don't use this to in hiring practices, promotional, employment decisions, but we can use it as a learning tool for individuals. So that may be something that you want to check out for some of your training, or just out of your own curiosity. So a little bit more about key elements that can help organizations be legally defensible, and I understand some of this is a little bit redundant. Performance appraisals need to be based on the job analysis that then lead to a job description. We need to be sure there's an absence of disparate impact or treatment. There needs to be a formal evaluation criteria, so we limit managerial discretion, and we need to have a rating instrument that is linked to job duties and responsibilities and nothing else. So I want to go over now with you something called Vroom's expectancy theory. I think it's a pretty nifty theory that helps explain a lot of things. It speaks about motivation that a person has in order to exert some level of effort, and that is a function of three things. Expectancy is we expect that our effort will then lead to performance. Instrumentality, this is the connection between performance and reward. And valence, which is the value the person places on the reward. This was presented by Victor Vroom in a book called Work and Motivation. I've given it to you in your optional readings in case you want to look at it a little bit more. It was first introduced back in 1964, but it is still relevant today. Others have added to the body of work regarding the theory and how we can apply it. It speaks to being sure that we are transparent in our appraisal and our reward systems, and that we select criteria that the employees feel that they can control, that the reward and the efforts are linked, and that the reward is of value to the person. I want to go through it just a little bit more, and as I'm doing so, think about whether this resonates with you. So the theory states that a person's motivation to exert some level of effort or motivation is a function of three things. Expectancy is that effort that they exert will lead to performance. Think about a sports team. Effort is important, and players on the team need to feel that effort in all of their training time, working out, and practice sessions will lead to their performance on game day. Instrumentality, they also need to feel that the connection between their performance will result in the award. The award or reward in a sports team is the score. It's winning the game. The connection between the performance of the individual and the reward expected need to be evident. Valence, the value the person places on the reward. The reward needs to be important to the person receiving it. We've spoken in the class about how motivation and therefore the reward and how it is valued is unique to the person and is based on their cultural differences. We look also at Maslow's hierarchy of needs or personality types in order to help think about the individual and where they are on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or their different personality types, how that helps determine what it is that's going to be important to them. So motivation is a factor of the expectancy times the instrumentality times the valence. And see that these are multiplication symbols, not plus symbols. And that is important because with multiplication, all three of these factors have to be present. If we were to use plus symbols, any could be more than zero and still motivation would be present. So in order to have motivation, we need to have these three. An example from my Marriott days in terms of whether the reward is of value to the person. At the New York Marquis Hotel, we were rewarding a housekeeper who had been named Housekeeper of the Year, and that's a big deal. It's a huge hotel, and the housekeepers compete for this particular title each year. But the reward had not been announced. When it was announced, it was dinner with the general manager. That may have been an exceptional dinner because it was going to be on the revolving restaurant at the top of the hotel overlooking New York City. But when the housekeeper was told what her reward was, she didn't seem to be too happy about it. And when asked, "Isn't this something that you would like?" and the housekeeper said, "Well, that's very nice, but I'd really like to take my family out for dinner. I don't even know the general manager." So we need to have to be careful about our rewards and be sure that there's something that the person really wants. Another example that explains the three elements of the expectancy theory. You work really hard in your classes, I know. You read all of the material, you complete all of the assignments, and you're thinking that you will meet, by doing this, the learning outcomes and gain competencies. That's the expectancy. And you feel that if you meet the learning outcomes, you will gain a promotion or get another job that you're interested in or get a pay raise or many other things. So that's the instrumentality, the connection between your performance and your reward. And then if you get what you had expected, or whatever it was that you expected when you enrolled in this program, then you have that congruence in expectancy, instrumentality, and balance that we're looking for. But if any of those three are not present, then you may not be motivated anymore to work hard in your classes. So just as a note, employ confidence building and training, accurate appraisals, knowledge of workers' desired rewards, all of this together can increase employee motivation as demonstrated in Vroom's expectancy theory. So I will not go into great detail about this because you probably already know all of the different types of compensation and other rewards, but just want to remind us that compensation comes in all kinds of various forms, and also that rewards can be something other than compensation, such as a show of appreciation or internal to the person, a sense of accomplishment. This chart just will take a automobile dealership and show some of the different ways that we could structure pay. And again, I'll not go into great detail about this, but if you have a sales force, they could probably be compensated on a commission. People in the finance office may have a salary, maybe a bonus for every car that is financed with the company. If you have a team in your detailing department, they may receive piece work paid for the number of cars that they detail in a day. Mechanics, this chart I think is a little old because it's saying that it may be a small hourly wage plus a bonus times the number of cars that they complete. In my dealership, maybe yours too today, the mechanics are paid a salary, a very nice salary, because our cars have changed. They're much more computerized today, and the mechanics need some, not that they didn't have good skills before and specialized, but even more in-demand skills today with the computerization. And then the receptionist may be paid a different type of salary, may be paid minimum wage, may receive minimum wage plus a incentive for good customer satisfaction. So just wanted to touch on those because when we're designing our performance appraisals and our rewards, there are different types incentives and base pay and bonuses and other rewards depending on the job itself. Regarding some of our non-compensation related rewards, in this chart, and it was back in 2002, a number of individuals were asked, out of this list, what are some of the things that you would like to have if you had a non-cash incentive? As you can see, 40% chose a trip, and then others chose a shopping spree, others things for their home, or things like beautification items like a spa, or tickets to some type of a show or sports. and 4 electronics. Probably if we redid this today, I'm guessing there might be more in the electronic category. So in looking at this list, any of these appealing to you? Um, so we need to survey, and we need to know what's important. So we don't have the situation like we had at the New York Marquis when the housekeeper was saying, thanks but no thanks. Don't know that I want to have dinner with the GM. So we just need to know individuals, and we do have a wide array. So use your money wisely and give people something that they're really interested in. Want to touch a little bit on 360-degree feedback. Most likely all of you are familiar with what this is, but if not, it means that you receive input, or the employee receives input in a full circle from peers, from individuals reporting to you if you have direct reports, from your boss or supervisor, and it can include vendors or customers. It can be anyone that you normally work with to give you that good feedback. This is generally viewed as objective and evidence-based because the feedback most often is carefully managed, and it is input from more than just one trained evaluator, and subjectivity is usually kept to a minimum and confidential. 360s can bring better action plans because they can be honed in on what the individual needs to improve in their performance, as seen by this wide range of individuals. It does require organization and coordination when we administer it, but it is viewed as fair and far less susceptible to employee challenges. I like the 360-degree instruments designed and administered by the Center for Creative Leadership. Some of you may be familiar with theirs, but there are many available, and they can be tailored to the organization. Gallup also has some good products, and I've used those. And they can be administered electronically to cut down on the burden of the time. Usually, if you're having a round of these 360s, you're probably being asked by a lot of people to give the feedback. And once again, people need to be trained in administering them. If you get a 360-degree feedback for the first time and the results are not what you were expecting, it can be pretty devastating. So you want to be sure that the person delivering the feedback is well trained in how to give it. You will hear me say later on in the class, and I've given you an article to read about 360-degree feedback. I prefer for the 360-degree feedback to be a developmental evaluation and not related to a person's pay. Many times, if others know that a person's pay is dependent upon input that they're giving, they may be reluctant to give really objective feedback. And sometimes, I hope this would never occur, but sometimes a person might have a grudge about the person, or maybe want to be very favorable to the person, and want to be able to boost their compensation. So it's, in my opinion, it's just better done off cycle from the merit increase, and it is, in my opinion, more effective if used in that way. So that's what we're going to cover this week, and here's some of the readings that I have assigned. In the Growth article, we talk about forced ranking and the law. You'll see examples from Capital One, from Sprint and Exxon, and we learn more about the landmines in a legal sense, such as disparate treatment and impact. That is on pages 4 through 6, in case you're curious about that. We also learn how age discrimination can be a concern, and the article speaks again to the need for training, allowing the employee to provide input, having defensible criteria, guarding against what the article calls dim-witted remarks, such as, let's get rid of the dead wood, or we need some new blood, or we need some young up-and-comers. All of these things do not look good in the eye of the law. The Kerr article speaks about organizational rewards. We covered some of them, but this goes back to 1999, but it's still current. And it talks about practical, cost-neutral alternatives that you may already know, but maybe you don't practice. So it's a good reminder for us that compensation can reward performance, but also there's other things that we can do. In the Plump article, dealing with problem employees. This is a legal guide. It's really general. It's not specific to performance appraisals. So it's one of those articles that you read and you think, oh my, never knew all of these items are related to employment. So it's a legal guide for all employers and all of you as managers and leaders. It's something that you may need at other times in your work life. So you'll find an overview of all of the many laws and regulations that could pertain to employee feedback, but and specifically problem employees, but other situations as well. I will tell you that the article speaks to the need for a standard evaluation form and of course training on how to give the evaluation, and it addresses the need for documentation and the need for having the employee to acknowledge the feedback or the coaching discussion. All of this is usually in your policies and procedures at work. The first thing an attorney will ask for in a lawsuit is a copy of your policies and procedures, so you want to follow them. They also want to look at any rules and regulations for conduct in the workplace, and they'll ask for a copy of your evaluation form. They may ask for a copy of any training documents and a list of who has attended that training to see if the manager giving the evaluation has attended training. So all of these things are important, and this particular article will highlight some of those laws and regulations in case you're not familiar with them. The article from Pewitt, should you use a 360-degree feedback for performance reviews, it shares a report from the Center for Creative Leadership. I mentioned to you that that's a set of tools that I like to use, stating that not all organizations are ready to use the 360 tool for compensation purposes, but it will tell you that if you were to use them for compensation, some of the things that you should do. And I do think that organizations today are a little bit closer to using that because I think individuals are a little more knowledgeable on the risk of being biased and subjective. The Salmons and Davila Citibank article in your Harvard Business Publishing course pack is what you will use for your case study for your assignment 1 this week. So you'll in your reading assignments, they could change from week to week, so be sure that you look in the course modules. I don't intend to change the case study, but always take a look there to be sure. Then a couple more articles. The Van Bogart is new legal battlegrounds for performance evaluations. This is a bit of an update from the Plump article, and it looks at some of the trends in lawsuits and legal issues in performance appraisals that now face us that did not in the past decade. And then the Van Buren article talks about justice in the workplace. That is an optional one. So, but if you want to learn more about organizational justice, then take a look at that. But if you feel like you know enough about that one from my discussion, then just leave that to another time. So thinking ahead to week 4, we leave the legal aspects of performance appraisals but look at raters and rater eras and trends in information technology for performance appraisal. You will conduct research and will report to the class through your research paper what you are finding in trends in information technology for performance appraisal. This has been a favorite assignment for many of the past cohorts, so I think you'll find it enjoyable. Lots of good things are going on, including wearables like our Fitbits to help collect data. We will also look at validity and inconsistency issues. We'll look at not only the rater errors but recommendations to reduce them. We'll once again look at best practices, but this time it will be in how we prepare and deliver appraisals and coaching sessions, and as I mentioned, the advances in information technology. But first, we will complete this week Module 3, and its focus on legal landmines, the link between appraisals and rewards, and by the end of this week, Sunday by midnight, Boulder time, you will submit to your assignments folder, but also you'll post in the course module about the performance management system at Citibank, your critique of it, and your recommendations. That's your first assignment in this class. I've waited because I wanted you to have foundation material under your belt before I assign the first major assignment. So the pace picks up a little bit in this class now, in that you will have major assignments due, if not every week, I'm thinking believe it is every week from this point on. So pull out those best practices in your time management and organization skills, and I look forward to spending the week with you. So I will see you online, and meanwhile, take care.